The first time my mother called me the help, I thought she was joking. It was Thanksgiving and their house looked like something out of a magazine, golden wreaths on the windows, a perfectly symmetrical centerpiece, candles flickering in crystal holders that had never known the touch of an actual flame until guests were present. My parents loved appearances. They loved curated lives. They loved control. And I was the only detail they could never quite polish. I arrived early like I always did. Not because I had to, but because someone had to make sure the turkey didn't burn while my mother adjusted her lipstick and my father rehearsed clever one-liners for his colleagues. I tied my hair back, rolled up my sleeves, and basted the turkey while the scent of rosemary and butter filled the kitchen. "You didn't have to come so early," my mother said lightly as she walked in, already dressed in a silk blouse the color of autumn leaves. "You asked me to," I reminded her. She waved a dismissive hand. "Well, yes, but still." That was my role in the family: convenient, quiet, useful. By the time guests began arriving, I was carrying trays, refilling glasses, and making sure everything ran smoothly. My father's boss and his wife were among the first to walk in, followed by a few neighbors and two of my mother's friends from her charity board. Then came the introduction. My mother laughed softly as she gestured toward me. "Oh, and this is our help for the evening. She's been wonderful." For a split second, I thought I misheard her. But then my father nodded. "Yes, she keeps things running around here." I stood frozen, a serving spoon still in my hand. No one questioned it. Why would they? I wasn't dressed for the part of a daughter. I wore simple black slacks and a plain blouse while my mother shimmered in silk and diamonds. I didn't stand beside them. I moved around them. So I did what I've always done. I smiled politely. And I kept serving. It wasn't the first time they had blurred the lines of who I was. Growing up, my older brother Matthew had been the pride of the family, Harvard graduate corporate attorney, engaged to a woman from an equally polished background. I, on the other hand, had chosen a different path. I built something from scratch. No trust funds, no connections, just long nights, stubborn determination, and a belief that I could create my own place in the world. But my success didn't fit their aesthetic. It wasn't glamorous enough. Or maybe it was too independent. Dinner progressed with laughter and clinking glasses. My father carved the turkey while discussing market trends. My mother described her latest fundraiser in exquisite detail. I moved silently between the dining room and kitchen until the doorbell rang again. My mother frowned. Were we expecting someone else? I wiped my hands on a towel and went to answer it. Standing on the porch was a man in his early 50s, silver threaded through dark hair, wearing a tailored charcoal coat. His presence was calm but commanding, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. For a moment I couldn't breathe. "Good evening," he said warmly. "I hope I'm not late." "You're right on time," I replied softly. Behind me my father's voice boomed. "Who is it?" The man stepped inside, removing his coat. "Daniel Carter, I believe we spoke briefly on the phone." My father blinked. "Daniel Carter from Carter Holdings." "Yes," he said with a polite nod. The room shifted. Even I felt it. Carter Holdings was no small name. It was a multi-million-dollar investment firm that had been selectively partnering with emerging businesses over the last year. My father straightened immediately. "Of course, Mr. Carter, welcome, please join us." My mother smoothed her blouse, her smile widening by the second. I stepped back toward the kitchen, intending to resume my invisible role. But Daniel didn't move toward the table. Instead, he looked directly at me. "I'm actually here because of her." The silence was immediate and heavy. My father laughed awkwardly. "I'm sorry." Daniel gestured toward me again. "You must be very proud." My mother tilted her head. "Proud of your daughter," he said clearly. "She's the founder and CEO of Greenbridge Community Housing, isn't she?" The air left the room in a single, collective inhale. No one spoke. I felt heat rush to my face. My father stared at me as if seeing me for the first time. Daniel continued, his voice calm and steady. "We finalized our partnership last week. Greenbridge will be receiving a substantial expansion grant. Her proposal was one of the most impressive strategic development plans we've reviewed this year." My mother's perfectly poised expression cracked. "She's the CEO," one of the neighbors whispered. Daniel smiled at me. She didn't mention she was spending Thanksgiving working. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to speak. It's just dinner. My father cleared his throat. Why didn't you tell us about this partnership? I met his eyes. I tried, I said quietly. You were busy. The words weren't sharp, they didn't need to be. The truth has a way of cutting clean. Daniel looked around the room. Greenbridge has already secured 3 city contracts and is projected to expand into 2 additional states next year. She's building affordable housing solutions that actually work. It's innovative, sustainable, profitable. He paused. And compassionate. That last word hung in the air. Compassion. Something my parents admired publicly but rarely practiced privately. My mother attempted a laugh. Well, we always knew she was ambitious. Daniel studied her for a moment, then said gently, ambition is common, execution is rare. The rest of dinner felt different. No one asked me to refill their wine. No one avoided eye contact. Instead, they asked questions about funding models, about sustainability metrics, about expansion plans. For the first time in my life, my father listened when I spoke. Truly listened. After dessert, guests began to leave, offering polite congratulations. Daniel lingered near the fireplace. You didn't have to come, I told him quietly. He smiled. I was in the area, and when I heard how modest you'd been about your success, I was curious. I exhaled slowly. I didn't think it mattered here. He looked around the house, the polished silverware, the staged perfection. It always matters, he said, especially here. When the last guest left, silence settled heavily over the room. My mother was the first to speak. Why didn't you tell us it was that serious? I almost laughed. I did tell you I was expanding. You said you were busy, my father muttered. Yes, I replied gently, I was. Not angry. Not bitter. Just factual. They didn't apologize. That would have required a level of humility they weren't ready for. But something had shifted. My father looked at me differently, not with pride exactly, but with recognition. As if he finally understood that the daughter who moved quietly through the kitchen had built something he couldn't control. Later that night, as I gathered my coat, my mother stopped me at the door. You didn't correct us, she said softly. When you called me the help. I held her gaze. I've been helping this family my whole life, I said. I just don't do it for free anymore. Her lips parted, but no words came. Outside, the night air was crisp and clean. I stepped onto the porch and inhaled deeply, feeling lighter than I had in years. For so long, I had chased their validation, their approval, their acknowledgement. But tonight I realized something. I didn't need it. I had built my own table. And next year, if I chose to host Thanksgiving, I would invite people who saw me not as help, not as background, not as convenience, but as the architect of my own life. As I walked toward my car, my phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Proud of you, and for what it's worth, you handled that with more grace than most would have. I smiled. Grace. Not silence. Not submission. Grace is strength without noise. And this year at Thanksgiving, someone had finally spoken up. But the real victory. I no longer needed anyone else to do it for me.